Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. A publisher, columnist, and blogger, Andrew Breitbart is the founder of the Breitbart network of investigative news websites, including Breitbart.com, Breitbart.tv, Big Government, Big Hollywood, Big Journalism, and Big Peace. Big Cosmos is surely on the boards.
I need to have a big synthesis and get it down to one portal.
Andrew Breitbart's new book, Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. Andrew Breitbart, welcome.
Thank you.
The Liberal Grows Up, Segment 1. You describe in Righteous Indignation a privileged upbringing in Southern California. Exclusive schools, very comfortable circumstances. Your parents weren't particularly political, but they were more or less conservative. And then this, I'm quoting from the book. Through some form of osmosis, I considered myself a liberal. How come?
My parents didn't fight for to maintain what it was they were teaching me through their deeds and their acts. They are a very silent generation. I grew up around with friends who had younger baby boomer parents, and they were very forthright in their politics. They would go to their rock concerts. They'd go to their Rock for Kampuchea. They'd fly to Philadelphia for Live Aid. And I remember my mother would watch Lawrence Welk on Saturday nights. The juxtaposition of...
That's not a hard choice. You want where the action was.
It was, and so as much as I loved my parents, the flow towards my friends and their parents' way of life and way of thinking was the most natural thing in the world.
Okay.
I loved my parents, but rejecting their orthodoxy was simple.
Once again, from Righteous Indignation, a turning point. You're in New Orleans, you're studying at Tulane, you're sitting down for a math exam, quote, and you're not doing well. I started to consider that maybe years of skating by, recklessly expecting everything to work out, had been exactly the wrong approach to derivatives. Nice sentence, by the way. Apparently, I realized sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you do have to make it work out, which means that values do matter, close quote. Andrew, you're raised in a conservative family and come out a liberal. You go to what you called, I don't have experience of Tulane, but I have no reason to doubt you.
It's any humanities department USA, and I hate to do this to Tulane because I'd love to be invited back there to speak to the students, to tell them about an alternative approach.
I guarantee it lies in your future at some point. Somebody will fund a trip to Tulane. But it's a liberal, it's an American university of its time, and you come out of that a conservative. How did this happen?
Well,
you are swimming against
I
was
an American Studies major, and I really did think that when I chose that, that it would be reading about the Constitution, the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, Mark Twain, and sort of a benign approach towards the American experience. And I didn't realize this until afterwards, because I can say this with absolute authority. Had I not graduated, had I not been given my diploma, it would have only been me to blame. When in New Orleans, do as the New Orleanians, I really did partake in the culture down there, and I can't believe I did graduate. But there was a point where...
Mardi Gras every night for Andrew Breitbart.
It was, and it was as depressing as it was ecstatic and fun. It was a prison of decadence, and it was 4 years of nonstop where people would come and visit me from my former life in Los Angeles, and they'd leave saying it was the best time of their lives. And as they'd get on the plane to depart the Bacchanalia, I would whisper under my breath, "Please take me with you," because it was Groundhog Day. It was every single. It was the It was the Monday nights. It was the Monday nights when people would say, "Do you want to go out?" And I said, "Nah, I think I'm going to stay in and study." And then 15 minutes later, I'd go out and I'd meet them. So I really didn't. I didn't dedicate myself to academia, and it was only after I graduated when I got a letter or an email, I don't remember the exact year, I think it was around 1994, asking me to assess my degree. You know, it was
self-assessment,
an assessment of it, and I started to look through the books, wondering what was that. What was that education? And what I remember was, to synthesize it, I've watched C-SPAN my entire life, and I remember I've watched Noam Chomsky talk in this strange
linguistic.
jargon that is not accessible to the average person. And I remember thinking to myself, there was a period there in my American Studies class where I was hearing the word deconstruction and semiotics a bit too many times. And I'm like, what's going on here? What is this language? What are they trying to do? And I started to analyze the courses that I took, and I realized that it was cultural Marxist theory. I'm like, this is kind of strange. I thought that this was supposed to be American studies, not German, Italian, nihilistic theory.
So in a way, it's just as well that you were debauched all 4 years.
That's the whole point of that chapter, is that I think alcohol saved me.
You go, I don't want my own college-age children to hear that line. I'll edit that line out from the version they see. After Tulane, you go back to Los Angeles and scrape around. You end up waiting table, you get a job as a courier at a production company, and an important moment comes when you know the man who will become your father-in-law, the comedian and actor Orson Bean, known to people of a certain generation from To Tell the Truth, known to people of another generation from Desperate Housewives. And well, here, I'll just quote to you from Righteous Indignation. One day I asked Orson why he had Rush Limbaugh's book, The Way Things Ought to Be, on his shelf. I was convinced to the core of my being that Rush Limbaugh was a Nazi, anti-black, anti-Jewish, and anti-all things decent. Orson simply suggested that I listen to him again. And what happened when you did?
Well, it was the 1992 election cycle, and at that point I thought I was a liberal, and I started listening to Rush simply because my alternative radio station had turned into a grunge rock festival. I loathed Kurt Cobain and Eddie Vedder so much that I switched to the AM dial out of desperation. And so that's really, I have to thank grunge music for turning me into a conservative. And I remember the first month or two thinking, well, I may not agree with his politics, but at no point have I heard him intimate anything that appears to be racist, sexist, or homophobic. And I started to ask people around me, have you ever listened to this Rush Limbaugh creature? And they said, yes, he's a racist, sexist, and a homophobe. I said, okay, I need some help here, because I've been listening now for months as I'm driving on LA freeways delivering scripts. He's not. He's not. And what I realized is I believed to the core of my being that I had listened to him. If you had given me a lie detector test, I promise you I would have passed, because with conviction, the culture, the 60 Minutes report on him, all of the things that I had been told reflected that negative stereotype. But I, in fact, had never assessed him myself, and recognizing that the mainstream media doesn't necessarily tell you the truth, or tells you the truth from its ideological standpoint, became this panacea for me, where I started to challenge the mainstream media